In this video, we're going to take a look at several body systems and also the best types of exercise to support these systems and how to strive for lifelong fitness. This is for Summer School 2016. Cardiovascular circulatory systems are two of the 12 body systems. These systems share a lot of the same elements and organs. They are distinct in their purpose, though, and we'll talk about the differences and similarities between the two as we go forward. The main purpose of these two systems is to pump blood through the body, moving oxygenated blood through the bloodstream, recovering oxygen-poor blood, getting that back to the lungs so that it can be replenished with oxygen, and moving that system through, moving the blood through the body. So let's take a look at several of the organs. The heart's purpose is rather straightforward. The heart is just that, the heart of the cardiovascular system. It is the muscle by which blood is pumped and retrieved through the circulatory system. It is obviously a vital organ, and we're going to take a look at some of the different elements of the heart in just a moment. Arteries are found throughout the circulatory system. Their purpose is to aid with the pumping of blood through the body. Okay, chambers of the heart. There are four chambers. There's an easy way to remember this. We're going to take a look at that in just a second. Each chamber is important. Each has its own function. So let's take a look at that. There are two aorta and two ventricles. There are two aorta and two ventricles. There is also a right and a left side of the heart. Right, left chamber. So when we talk about this, we're talking about the right atrium or left atrium, or the right ventricle or left ventricle. This is kind of wordy. If you want to pause it and read it, if that helps you, if you're somebody who's going to learn better that way, I want to make sure I had this on here for you as well. I'm not going to read through it, so feel free to pause it if you'd like to. Otherwise, we're going to continue working through with the pictures. So if we take a look at the way blood travels through the body, we're going to focus on numbers. Look at the numbers in this picture. Really 1, 2, 4, 6, and 7. The other numbers are important, but that's not what we're focusing on right now. Starting at number 1, the right atrium receives deoxygenated blood or oxygen-poor blood. The body's used the oxygen in the blood, and we need to get it back to where it needs to go, which is the lungs, to get it replenished. So it'll start through the right atrium. We'll talk about the terms atrium and ventricle in just a moment. Once it's received through the right atrium, it moves to the right ventricle, which is number 2 in this picture. And again, what we're focusing on is it's going to make its way to the lungs, where it will be replenished with oxygen. It will then make its way to the left atrium, and then to the left ventricle, where it will be pumped back into the circulatory system. So let's talk about this. Right and left. Right deals with oxygen poor, left deals with oxygen rich. So whenever you're thinking of this, the right chambers of the heart deal with oxygen poor blood, or blood that needs to be reoxygenated. The left is going to deal with oxygen rich blood, or blood that's already been replenished with oxygen. So right, poor oxygenated blood, left, rich oxygenated blood. Okay, and with that we add atrium and ventricle. I don't know, just a couple of ways that this might help you. Remember this, an atrium, if you think of what an atrium is, it's usually a place of receiving. So if you think atrium, just always think receiving blood. Atrium always receives blood. A ventricle, if you think of a vent gets rid of things. So if we think ventricle, it pumps the blood out. So atrium receives, ventricle pumps or drives blood out. Okay? So right deals with oxygen poor, left oxygen rich. Atrium receives, ventricle pumps. Okay? So we're just talking about blood flow through the circulatory system. I thought this was kind of a cool picture. One more time. Right, oxygen poor blood. Left, oxygen rich blood. Atrium receives. Ventricle pumps. And it looks something like this. Okay, so now that we have taken a look at the heart, the movement of blood through the body, as it relates to the heart and what its role in that is, let's start taking a look at blood types. Okay, a couple things we need to make sure we understand about this. First is the term antigen. Antigen, and I like this description of it. An antigen is going to determine blood type. So when we're talking about whatever blood type we're talking about, it is determined by the antigen that is present. And I like this at the bottom in particular. An antigen is an antibody generating agent. An antigen is an antibody generating agent. So antigen. Okay, so it produces antibodies. Antibodies are part of your immune system. Okay. So there are 4 types of blood. Okay, depending on the presence or absence of different antigens. Okay. In this case, really what we're talking about, the 4 types of blood or blood types are type A, B, A and B, or type O. I like this picture because it does a very good job of simply explaining presence of antigens. I don't want to get into specifics in antigens because that's a level we don't want to go to right now. But you can see in this picture, type A and B are just 2 different kinds of antigens. So if there's one type, or type A, then that's going to be a type A blood type. If it's type B, it's going to be type B. If both are present, it's A and B. If both are absent, it's type O. Pretty straightforward. It's either going to be A, B. If they're both there, it's A and B. If neither are there, it's type O. Now, if you've ever heard about people talk about blood types, you usually hear things like O positive or O negative or what have you. Okay, there's an additional antigen that will determine that. And just like in our previous slide, notice in type O, there's no type of antigen present. Therefore, it's type O. In type A and B, both are present. Okay, so same concept. The presence of the RH markers or RH antigens will determine if it's positive or negative. If the blood type has it, it's positive. If the blood type doesn't have it, it's negative. So in other words, if we look at our type A, for example, if that type of blood, if that particular person has type A antigen and the RH antigen, then they are A positive. If they don't have the RH antigen, they're A negative. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so why is this important? Some of you may have heard about people receiving blood transfusions or matching blood types. Some of you may have had one at some point in your life. It is very important that the blood types match. Okay, you can't give somebody who is A positive, you can't give them type O negative. Now there's some caveats to that, and there's some other specifics, but generally that's the case. You want to match the blood type. There are some blood types that will work better with others, but you want to match the blood types. If you don't, the body will reject it. Remember, we talked about what an antigen was as an antibody generating agent. So if you try to match 2 types of blood types that are not compatible, the body's going to reject the blood, in essence. That's why you want to know what your blood type is and why that's important. And we're going to talk about blood type in class. We'll see if we can determine that in class. Okay, so what's in blood? Okay, we talked about the heart and its purpose in the circulatory system. We talked about different kinds of blood types. Let's talk about what's in blood. And there really are 4 main things. And those 4 things are in this picture. Plasma, red blood cells, platelets, and white blood cells. Let's talk about what those things are. We talked about how the body distributes oxygen through the bloodstream, and it does so through red blood cells. The red blood cells are the ones that are responsible for carrying oxygen throughout the body. When the circulatory system is replenishing oxygen in the blood, it is replenishing red blood cells. Okay, so whenever you think red blood cells, think oxygen-carrying cells. White blood cells are an important part of the immune system. They attack infections such as bacteria and viruses. So the purpose of white blood cells is to keep you healthy, to fight infections. Okay, so red blood cells carry oxygen. White blood cells fight infection. Plasma is kind of the best way to think of plasma is just the stuff that all the cells move in. I thought this picture was a pretty good way of explaining that. You can see there's different kinds of cells in this particular picture, but it's all kind of moving through the river that is plasma, I guess. So plasma is the material in which the cells actually are able to move. Finally, there are platelets. If you get a cut, you will soon that cut's soon going to heal up, and it will stop bleeding. And that's because of platelets. Platelets are responsible for clotting, or causing blood to dry and to turn into a scab, basically. So platelets are very important. If you don't have a lot of platelets, and there's actually disorders surrounding this, a person can actually can bleed out because there's no clotting agent. There's nothing there making the blood clot to stop bleeding. Okay. So real quickly, our four components we're talking about that make up blood are red blood cells carrying oxygen, white blood cells as part of your immune system, plasma, basically the stuff that the cells move in, that allows the cells to move through the circulatory system, and platelets, which are responsible for clotting. Okay, so if we look at blood, the overall makeup, the majority of it is plasma, which makes sense. I mean, this is, if you think of it, I don't know, maybe a good analogy is thinking of it as cereal, right? Your cereal sits in milk. Obviously, if you were to pour a bowl of cereal and not have any milk in it, it would be a much different experience than if you had milk in it, right? So that's important. And you have a lot of milk when usually in cereal you have more milk than anything else. So plasma, generally speaking, 55%. White blood cells and platelets, a much smaller percentage, and red blood cells make up the rest. Again, makes sense when you understand the red blood cells are responsible for carrying oxygen. Okay, so let's talk about some disorders, some things we need to be concerned about. Cholesterol is basically undigestible animal fat that lines the valves of the circulatory system. Okay, so if a person eats a lot of meat, that meat carries cholesterol, and I'm sure you've heard people talk about cholesterol before. The reason why it's dangerous is it can kind of line the tubes of your circulatory system, if you will, and over time, just like a sink clogs, if you've ever seen a sink clog with hair or whatever that gets down in the tubes, it doesn't allow for water to go to drain. Well, the same principle happens in this case when that tube or the valve gets clogged and the blood can no longer pump. That's definitely a problem. So we want to make sure we're aware of our cholesterol intake, that we're eating healthy things and eating things in a balanced way. So why understand the circulatory system? Well, it's part of lifelong health. It is a vital body system in that it delivers oxygen to your muscles and to various parts of your body so that you can live. Every system has its importance. The skeletal system gives protection and structure to your body. The nervous system allows you to be aware of what's going on around you. The circulatory system pumps blood through the body, and that's what makes it important.